I've been celebrating Bloomsday on the 16th of June every year for the last 20 years. My first Bloomsday that I organised was in Edinburgh in 1999, and I've done Bloomsdays in Malaysia, in Germany, in Britain, and also now in the USA. But my most memorable Bloomsday and the best Bloomsday I've been involved in was the Bloomsday here at the Rosenbach Museum last year, when I was part of a remarkable day of readings from Joyce's great novel, and it was a fantastic setting. I really enjoyed every moment of it. I will never forget my first Bloomsday in America at the Rosenbach Museum, and this wonderful outdoor arena where so many Philadelphians came to hear readings from that great Irish novel, that great modern novel, the greatest novel in the English language of the 20th century.
So this reading is from the Cyclops chapter. It's a little bit out of sync, but anyway, I have to catch a train in about an hour's time, so I better get on with it. But Cyclops chapter is Joyce's lampooning of what he regarded as narrow-minded nationalism, not just in Ireland, but all over Europe. Because remember, Joyce wrote this book during the First World War, when the nations of Europe were killing each other on an industrial scale. So this is his warning against excessively narrow-minded nationalism, which, might be something relevant to today's world as well. You never know. That's not for me to say. I'm just an ambassador reading an excerpt from James Joyce. Here we go. Are you a strict TG? Not taking anything between drinks, says I. What about paying our respects to our friends, says Joe. Who, says I? Sure, he's out in John of God's, off his head, poor man. Drinking his own stuff, says Joe. Aye, says I, whiskey and water on the brain. Come around to Barney Kiernan, says Joe. I want to see the citizen. Barney Mavourneen's be it, says I. Anything strange or wonderful, Joe? Not a word, says Joe. I was up at a meeting in the City Arms. What was that about, Joe, says I. Cattle trader, says Joe. About the foot and mouth disease. I want to give the citizen the hard word about it. So we went around to the Linen Hall barracks and at the back of the courthouse, talking of one thing and another. Decent fella, Joe, when he has it. But you're like that, he never has it. Jesus, I couldn't get over that bloody foxy Geraghty, the daylight robber, for trading without a license, says he. In Inishvale the fair there lies a land, the land of holy Mitchin. There rises a watchtower beheld of men afar. There sleep the mighty dead as in life they slept, warriors and princes of high renown. A pleasant land it is, sooth, of murmuring waters, fishful streams where sport the gunnard, the plaice, the roach, the halibut, the gibbed haddock, the grilse, the dab, the brill, the founder, the pollock, the mixed coarse fish generally, and other denizens of the aqueous kingdom, too numerous to be enumerated. In the mild breezes of the west and of the east, the lofty trees wave in different directions their first-class foliage. The wafty sycamore, the Lebanonian cedar, the exalted plane tree, the eugenic eucalyptus, and other ornaments of the arboreal world with which that region is thoroughly well supplied. Lovely maidens sit in close proximity to the roots of the lovely trees, singing the most lovely songs, while they play with all kinds of lovely objects, as, for example, golden ingots, silvery fishes, crans of herrings, draughts of eels, codlings, creels of fingerlings, purple sea gems, and playful insects. And heroes voyage from afar to woo them, from Ablana to Steve Margie, the peerless princes of unfettered Munster, and of Connaught the Just, and of smooth, sleek Leinster, and of Cruachan's land, and of Armagh the Splendid, and of the noble district of Boyle, princes, the son of kings. And there rises a shining palace, whose crystal glittering roof is seen by mariners who traverse the extensive sea in barks built expressly for that purpose. And thither come all herds and fatlings and first fruits of that land, for O'Connell Fitzsimon takes toll of them, a chieftain descended from chieftains. Thither, the extremely large wains bring foison of the fields, flaskets of cauliflower, floats of spinach, pineapple chunks, Rangoon beans, strikes of tomatoes, drums of figs, drills of Swedes, spherical potatoes, and tallies of iridescent kale, York and Savoy, and trays of onions, pearls of the earth, and punnets of mushrooms, and custard marrows, and fat vetches, and beer and rape, and red, green, yellow, brown, russet, big, sweet, bitter, ripe, pomellated apples, and chips of strawberries, and sieves of gooseberries, pulpy and pelurious, and strawberries fit for princes, and raspberries from their canes. I dare him, says he, and I double dare him. Come out here, Geraghty, you notorious bloody hill and dale robber. And by the way, when the herds innumerable of bellwethers, and flushed ewes, and shearling rams, and lambs, and stubble geese, and medium steers, and roaring mares, and polled calves, and long wools, and store sheep, and Cuff's prime springers, and culls, and sow pigs, and bacon hogs, and the various different varieties of highly distinguished swine, and Angus heifers, and Polly bullocks of immaculate pedigree, together with prime premiated milch cows and beeves. And there is ever heard a trampling, cackling, roaring, lowing, bleating, bellowing, rumbling, grunting, champing, chewing of sheep and pigs and heavy-hooved kine from the pasture lands of Lusk and Rush and Carrickmines, from the streamy vales of Thomond, from the McGillicuddy's reeks, the inaccessible, and lordly Shannon, the unfathomable, and from the gentle declivities of the place of the race of Keir, their udders distended with superabundance of milk, and butts of butter, and rennets of cheese, and farmers' firkins, and targets of lamb, and crannocks of corn, and oblong eggs in various great hundreds, various in size, the agate with the dun. So we turned in to Barney Kiernan's, and there, sure enough, was up in the corner, was a citizen having a great confab with himself and that bloody mangy mongrel Gary Owen, and he waiting for what the sky would drop in the way of drink. There he is, says I, in his glory hole with his Krushkeen lawn and his load of papers working for the cause. The bloody mongrel, let a grouse out of him, would give you the creeps. Be a corporal work of mercy if someone would take the life of that bloody dog. I'm told for a fact he ate a good part of the breeches of a constabulary man in Santry that came around one time with a blue paper about a license. "Stand and deliver," says he. "That's all right, citizen," says Joe. "Friends here." "Past friends," says he. Then he rubs his hand in his eye and says he, "What's your opinion of the times?" Doing the rapparee and Rory of the Hill, but begob Joe was equal to the occasion. "I think the markets are on the rise," says he, sliding his hand down his fork. So begob the citizen claps his paw on his knees and he says, "Foreign wars is the cause of it." And says Joe, sticking his thumb in his pocket, "It's the Russians' wish to tyrannize." "Ara, give over your bloody codding," says Joe, says I. "I've a thirst on me I wouldn't sell for a half a crown." "Give it a name, citizen," says Joe. "Wine of the country," says he. "What's yours?" says Joe. "Ditto Macanaspi," says I. "3 pints, Terry," says Joe. "And how's the old heart, citizen?" says he. "Never a better Achara," says he. "What, Gary? Are we going to win, eh?" And with that, he took the bloody old Towser by the scruff of the neck, and by Jesus, he nearly throttled him. The figure seated on a large boulder at the foot of a round tower was that of a broad-shouldered, deep-chested, strong-limbed, frank-eyed, red-haired, freely freckled, shaggy-bearded, wide-mouthed, long-nosed, long-headed, deep-voiced, bare-kneed, brawny-handed, hairy-legged, ruddy-faced, sinewy-armed hero. From shoulder to shoulder, he measured several ells, and his rock-like mountainous knees were covered, as was likewise the rest of his body, wherever visible, with a strong growth of tawny, prickly hair, in hue and toughness similar to the mountain gorse. The wide-winged nostrils, from which bristles of the same tawny hue projected, were of such capaciousness that within their cavernous obscurity the fieldlark might easily have lodged her nest. The eyes, in which a tear and a smile strove ever for the mastery, were of the dimensions of a good-sized cauliflower. A powerful current of warm breath issued at regular intervals from the profound cavity of his mouth, while in rhythmic resonance the loud, strong, hail reverberations of his formidable heart thundered rumblingly, causing the ground, the summit of the lofty tower, and the still loftier walls of the cave to vibrate and tremble. He wore a long-sleeved garment of recently flayed oxhide, reaching to the knees in a loose kilt, and this was bound about his middle by a girdle of plaited straw and rushes. Beneath this he wore trews of deerskin, roughly stitched with gut. His nether extremities were encased in high balbriggan buskins dyed in lichen purple, the feet being shod with brogues of salted cowhide, laced with the windpipe of the same beast. From his girdle hung a row of sea stones which jangled at every movement of his frame, and on these were graven, with rude yet striking art, the tribal images of many Irish heroes and heroines of antiquity. Cuchulainn, Khan of the 100 Battles, Niall of the 9 Hostages, Brian of Kincora, the Ardrey Malachy, Art McMurray, Shane O'Neill, Father John Murphy, Owen Rowe, Patrick Sarsfield, Red Hugh O'Donnell, Red Jim McDermott, Sogart Owen O'Growney, Michael Dwyer, Francie Higgins, Henry Joy McCracken, Goliath, Horace Wheatley, Thomas Cuniff, Peg Woofington, the Village Blacksmith, Captain Moonlight, Captain Boycott, Dante Alighieri, Christopher Columbus, St. Furza, St. Brendan, Marshal McMahon, Charlemagne, Theobald Wolfe Tone, the Mother of the Maccabees, the Last of the Mohegans, the Rose of Castile, the Man for Galway, the Man that broke the bank at Monte Carlo, the Man in the Gap, the Woman who didn't, Benjamin Franklin, Napoleon Bonaparte, John L. Sullivan, Cleopatra, Savornine Delish, Julius Caesar, Paracelsus, Sir Thomas Lipton, William Tell, Michelangelo, Hayes, Muhammad, the Bride of Lammermoor, Peter the Hermit, Peter the Packer, Dark Rosaline, Patrick W. Shakespeare, Brian Confucius, Murta Gutenberg, Patricio Velasquez, Captain Nemo, Tristan Isolde, the First Prince of Wales, Thomas Cook and Son, the Bold Soldier Boy, Aaron Pogue, Dick Turpin, Ludwig Beethoven, the Colleen Bawn, Wadler Healy, Angus de Cully, Dolly Mount, Sidney Parade, Ben Hoth, Valentine Greatrakes, Adam and Eve, Arthur Wellesley, Boss Croker, Herodotus, Jack the Joint Killer, Gautama Buddha, Lady Godiva, the Lily of Killarney, Balor of the Evil Eye, the Queen of Sheba, Aki Nagel, Joe Nagel, Alessandro Volta, Jeremiah O'Donovan Rossa, Don Philip O'Sullivan Bear. A couch spear of acuminated granite rested by him, while at his feet reposed a savage animal of the canine tribe, whose stertorous gasps announced that he was sunk in uneasy slumber, a supposition confirmed by hoarse growls and spasmodic movements, which his master repressed from time to time by tranquilizing blows of a mighty cudgel rudely fashioned out of Paleolithic stone.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey Bates. I'm the Associate Director at the Rosenbach. The Rosenbach is a nonprofit museum and library in Center City, Philadelphia. My colleagues and I love sharing content like this with you, both on June 16th and all year round. We rely on support from our members and donors to help us share our world-class collection of literature and history with you. We would appreciate your support today, and if you click on the link below and send us a contribution, we would love to share with you a poster or a sticker with original artwork by artist Rob Barry. Thank you so much for your support, and enjoy the readings.
Hello, and welcome to Bloomsday 2020. I'm Peter Nalle, Chairman of the Rosenbach Museum and Library. We at the Rosenbach have been reading Ulysses on the steps of the museum for almost 30 years now. Obviously, we are not live on the steps this year, but we do hope you will enjoy this year's virtual reading. I'm going to read now a passage from Cyclops that I think is very relevant to the events of today. "Show us over the drink," says I. "Which is which?" "That's mine," says Joe, as the devil said to the dead policeman. "And I belong to a race too," says Bloom, "that is hated and persecuted. Also now, this very moment, this very instant." God, he near burnt his fingers with the butt of his old cigar. "Robbed," says he, "plundered, insulted, persecuted. Taking what belongs to us by right, at this very moment," says he, putting up his fist, "sold by auction in Morocco, like slaves or cattle." "Are you talking about the New Jerusalem?" says the citizen. "I'm talking about injustice," says Bloom. "Right," says John Wise. "Stand up to it then, with force like men." That's an almanac picture for you. Mark for a soft-nosed bullet, old lardy face, standing up to the business end of a gun. Gob, he'd adorn a sweeping brush, so he would, if he only had a nurse's apron on him. And then he collapses all of a sudden, twisting around, all the opposite, as limp as a wet rag. "But it's no use," he says. "Force, hatred, history, all that. That's not life for men and women. Insult and hatred. And everybody knows that it's the very opposite of that that is really life." "What?" says Alf. "Love," says Bloom. "I mean the opposite of hatred." "I must go now," he says to John Wise. "Just round to the court a moment to see if Martin is there. If he comes, just say I'll be back in a second. Just a moment." "Who's hindering you?" And off he pops like greased lightning. "A new apostle to the Gentiles," says the citizen. "Universal love." "Well," says John Wise, "isn't that what we're told? Love your neighbor." "That chap," says the citizen. "Beggar my neighbor is his motto. Love Moya. He's a nice pattern of a Romeo and Juliet." Love loves to love. Nurse loves the new chemist. Constable 14A loves Mary Kelly. Gertie McDowell loves the boy that has the bicycle. MB loves a fair gentleman. Lychee hand lovey up kissy chop poo chow. Jumbo, the elephant, loves Alice, the elephant. Old Mr. Verchoil with the ear trumpet loves old Mrs. Verchoil with the turned-in eye. The man in the brown mackintosh loves a lady who is dead. His Majesty, the King, loves Her Majesty, the Queen. Mrs. Norman W. Tupper loves Officer Taylor. You love a certain person, and this person loves that other person because everybody loves somebody, but God loves everybody.
I'm Elizabeth Fuller, and I'll be reading from the conclusion of the Cyclops episode. A large and appreciative gathering of friends and acquaintances from the metropolis and Greater Dublin assembled in their thousands to bid farewell to Nagyashagos Uram Lipoti Virag, late of Messrs. Alexander Toms, printers to His Majesty, on the occasion of his departure for the distant clime of Sasarmin's Borugulash Dugulash, Meadow of Murmuring Waters. The ceremony, which went off with great eclat, was characterized by the most affecting cordiality. An illuminated scroll of ancient Irish vellum, the work of Irish artists, was presented to the distinguished phenomenologist on behalf of a large selection of the community, and was accompanied by the gift of a silver casket, tastefully executed in the style of ancient Celtic ornament, a work which reflects every credit on the makers, Messrs. Jacob August Jacob. The departing guest was the recipient of a hearty ovation, many of those who were present being visibly moved when the select orchestra of Irish pipes struck up the well-known strains of Come Back to Erin, followed immediately by Rakosi's March. Tar barrels and bonfires were lighted along the coastline of the four seas on the summits of the Hill of Howth, Three Rock Mountain, Sugarloaf, Brayhead, the Mountains of Mourne, the Galtees, the Ox and Donegal and Sperrin Peaks, the Nagels and the Bogras, the Connemara Hills, the reeks of McGillicuddy, Slieve Aughty, Slieve Burnagh, and Slieve Bloom. Amid cheers that rent the welkin, responded to by answering cheers from a big muster of henchmen on the distant Cambrian and Caledonian hills, the mastodontic pleasure ship slowly moved away, saluted by a final floral tribute from the representatives of the fair sex who were present in large numbers, while, as it proceeded down the river, escorted by a flotilla of barges, the flags of the ballast office and custom house were dipped in salute, as were those of the electrical power station at Pigeon House. Visant la tashra, kedves baraton. Visant la tashra. Gone, but not forgotten. God, the devil wouldn't stop him till he got hold of the bloody tin anyhow, and out with him, and little Alf hanging onto his elbow, and he shouting like a stuck pig, as good as any bloody play in the Queen's Royal Theatre. Where is he till I murder him? Ned and J.G. paralyzed with the laughing. Bloody worse, says I. I'll be in for the last gospel. But as luck would have it, the Jarvey got the nag's head round the other way and off with him. Hold on, citizen, says Joe. Stop. Begobby drew his hand and made a swipe and let fly. Mercy of God, the sun was in his eyes, or he'd have left him for dead. Gobby near sent it into the county Longford. The bloody nag took fright, and the old mongrel after the car like bloody hell, and all the populace shouting and laughing, and the old tin blocks clattering along the street. The catastrophe was terrific and instantaneous in its effect. The observatory of Dunsink registered in all 11 shocks, all of the 5th grade of Mercalli's scale, and there is no record extant of a similar seismic disturbance in our island since the earthquake of 1543, the year of the rebellion of Silken Thomas. The epicenter appears to have been that part of the metropolis which constitutes the Inns Quay ward and parish of St. Michan, covering a surface of 41 acres, 2 roods, and 1 square pole or perch. All the lordly residences in the vicinity of the Palace of Justice were demolished, and that noble edifice itself, in which at the time of the catastrophe important legal debates were in progress, is literally a mass of ruins, beneath which it is to be feared all the occupants have been buried alive. From the reports of eyewitnesses, it transpires that the seismic waves were accompanied by a violent atmospheric perturbation of cyclonic character. An article of headgear since ascertained to belong to the much-respected Clerk of the Crown and Peace, Mr. George Fottrell, and a silk umbrella with gold handle with the engraved initials, coat of arms, and house number of the erudite and worshipful chairman of Quarter Sessions, Sir Frederick Falconer, Recorder of Dublin, had been discovered by search parties in the remote parts of the island, respectively the former on the 3rd basaltic ridge of the Giant's Causeway, the latter embedded to the extent of 1 foot 3 inches in the sandy beach of Hole Open Bay near the old head of Kinsale. Other eyewitnesses depose that they observed an incandescent object of enormous proportions, hurtling through the atmosphere at a terrifying velocity in a trajectory directed southwest by west. Messages of condolence and sympathy are being hourly received from all parts of the different continents, and the Sovereign Pontiff has been graciously pleased to decree that a special Missa pro defunctis shall be celebrated simultaneously by the ordinaries of each and every cathedral church of all the episcopal dioceses subject to the spiritual authority of the Holy See, in suffrage of the souls of those faithful departed who have been so unexpectedly called away from our midst. The work of salvage, removal of debris, human remains, etc., has been entrusted to Messrs. Michael Mead and Son, 159 Great Brunswick Street, and Messrs. T.C. Martin, 77, 78, 79, and 80 North Wall, assisted by the men and officers of the Duke of Cornwall's Light Infantry, under the general supervision of HRH Rear Admiral the Right Honorable Sir Hercules Hannibal Habeas Corpus Anderson, KG, KP, KT, PC, KCB, MP, JP, MB, DSO, SOD, MFH, MRIA, BL, MuseDoc, PLG, FTCD, FRUI, FRCPI, and FRCSI. You never saw the like of it in all your born puff. God, if he got that lottery ticket on the side of his pole, he'd remember the gold cup. He would so. But begob the citizen would have been lagged for assault and battery, and Joe for aiding and abetting. The Jarvey saved his life by furious driving, as sure as God made Moses. What? Oh, Jesus, he did. And he let a volley of oaths after him. Did I kill him, says he, or what? And he's shouting to the bloody dog, After him, Gary! After him, boy! And the last we saw was the bloody car rounding the corner, an old sheep-face on it gesticulating, and the bloody mongrel after it with his lugs back for all he was bloody well worth to tear him limb from limb. 100 to 5. Jesus, you took the value of it out of him, I promise you. When lo, there came about them all a great brightness, and they beheld the chariot wherein he stood ascend to heaven. And they beheld him in the chariot, clothed upon in the glory of the brightness, having raiment as of the sun, fair as the moon, and terrible that for awe they durst not look upon him. And there came a voice out of heaven calling, Elijah! Elijah! And he answered with a main cry, Abba! Adonai! And they beheld him, even him, Ben Bloom Elijah, amid clouds of angels, ascend to the glory of the brightness at an angle of 45 degrees over Donahoe's in Little Green Street like a shot off a shovel.
Hi, my name is Emilie Parker. I'm reading from Chapter 13, Nausicaa. The summer evening had begun to fold the world in its mysterious embrace. Far away in the west, the sun was setting, and the last glow of all too fleeting day lingered lovingly on sea and strand. On the proud promontory of dear old Howth, guarding as ever the waters of the bay, on the weed-grown rocks along sandy mount shore, and, last but not least, on the quiet church, whence there streamed forth at times, upon the stillness, the voice of prayer to her who is in her pure radiance, a beacon ever to the storm-tossed heart of man, Mary, star of the sea. The three girlfriends were seated on the rocks, enjoying the evening scene and the air which was fresh but not too chilly. Many a time and oft were they wont to come there to their favorite nook to have a cozy chat beside the sparkling waves and discuss matters feminine. Sissy Caffrey and Edie Boardman, with the baby in the pushchair, and Tommy and Jackie Caffrey, two little curly-headed boys, dressed in sailor suits with caps to match, and the name HMS Belle Isle printed on both. For Tommy and Jackie Caffrey were twins, scarce 4 years old, and very noisy and spoiled twins sometimes, but for all that darling little fellows with bright merry faces and endearing ways about them. They were dabbling in the sand with their spades and buckets, building castles as children do, or playing with their big colored ball, happy as the day was long. and Edie Boardman was rocking the chubby baby to and fro in the pushchair, while that young gentleman fairly chuckled with delight. He was but 11 months and 9 days old, and though still a tiny toddler, was just beginning to lisp his first babyish words. Sissy Caffrey bent over to him to tease his fat little plucks and the dainty dimple in his chin. "Now, baby," Sissy Caffrey said, "say out big, big, I want a drink of water." And baby prattled after her, "A jinka-jinka-jawbo." Sissy Caffrey cuddled the wee chap, for she was awfully fond of children, so patient with little sufferers, and Tommy Caffrey could never be got to take his castor oil unless it was Sissy Caffrey that held his nose and promised him the scatty heel of the loaf or brown bread with golden syrup on. What a persuasive power that girl had. But to be sure, baby Boardman was good as gold, perfect little dote in his fancy new bib. "None of your spoilt beauties, Flora McFlimsy's sort," was Sissy Caffrey. A true-hearted lass never drew the breath of life, always with a laugh in her gypsy-like eyes and a frolicsome word on her cherry-ripe red lips. A girl lovable in the extreme. And Edie Boardman laughed too with the quaint language of little brother. But just then there was a slight altercation between Master Tommy and Master Jackie. Boys will be boys, and our two twins were no exception to this golden rule. The apple of discord was a certain castle of sand which Master Jackie had built, and Master Tommy would have it right go wrong that it was to be architecturally improved by a front door like the Martello Tower had. But if Master Tommy was headstrong, Master Jackie was self-willed too, and true to the maxim that every little Irishman's house is his castle, he fell upon his hated rival, and to such purpose that the would-be assailant came to grief, and, alas to relate, the coveted castle too. Needless to say, the cries of discomfited Master Tommy drew the attention of the girlfriends. "Come here, Tommy," his sister called imperatively, "at once. And you, Jackie, for shame to throw poor Tommy in the dirty sand. Wait till I catch you for that." His eyes misty with unshed tears, Master Tommy came at her call, for their big sister's word was law with the twins, and in a sad plight he was too after his misadventure. His little man-o'-war top and unmentionables were full of sand, but Sissy was a past mistress at the art of smoothing over life's tiny troubles, and very quickly not one speck of sand was to be seen on his smart little suit. Still, the blue eyes were glistening with hot tears that would well up, so she kissed away the hurtness and shook her hand at Master Jackie the culprit and said if she was near him, she wouldn't be far from him, her eyes dancing in admonition. "Nasty bold Jackie," she cried. She put an arm around the little mariner and coaxed winningly, "What's your name? Butter and cream?" "Tell us who your sweetheart," spoke Edie Boardman. "Is Sissy your sweetheart?" "No," tearful Tommy said. "Is Edie Boardman your sweetheart?" Sissy queried. "No," Tommy said. "I know," Edie Boardman said none too amiably with an arch glance from her short-sighted eyes. "I know who is Tommy's sweetheart. Gertie is Tommy's sweetheart." "No," Tommy said on the verge of tears. Sissy's quick mother wit guessed what was amiss, and she whispered to Edie Boardman to take him there behind the pushchair where the gentleman couldn't see, and Amain didn't wet his new tan shoes. But who was Gertie? Gertie McDowell, who was seated near her companions, lost in thought, gazing far away into the distance, was, in very truth, as fair a specimen of winsome Irish girlhood as one could wish to see. She was pronounced beautiful by all who knew her, though, as folks often said, she was more gilt-trapped than a McDowell. Her figure was slight and graceful, inclining even to fragility, but those iron jelloids she'd been taking of late had done her a world of good. Much better than the Widow Welsh's female pills, and she was much better of those discharges she used to get in that tired feeling. The waxen pallor of her face was almost spiritual in its ivory-like purity. Through her rosebud mouth was a genuine Cupid's bow. Greekly perfect, her hands were of finely veined alabaster, with tapering fingers and as white as lemon juice, and queen of ointments could make them, though. It was not true that she used to wear kid gloves in bed, or take a milk foot bath either. Bertha Supple told that once to Edie Boardman, a deliberate lie, when she was black out at daggers drawn with Gertie. The girl chums had, of course, their little tiffs from time to time like the rest of mortals. And she told her not to let on whatever. She did that it was her that told her, or she'd never speak to her again. No, honor where honor is due. There was an innate refinement, a languid, queenly hauteur about Gertie, which was unmistakably evidenced in her delicate hands and high-arched instep. Had kind fate but willed her to be born a gentlewoman of high degree in her own right, and had she only received the benefit of a good education, Gertie McDowell might easily have held her own beside any lady in the land, and have seen herself exquisitely gowned with jewels on her brow and patrician suitors at her feet, vying with one another to pay their devoir to her. Mayhap it was this, the love that might have been, that lent to her softly featured face at whiles a look tense with suppressed meaning, that imparted a strange yearning tendency to her beautiful eyes, a charm few could resist. Why have women such eyes of witchery? Gertie's were of the bluest Irish blue, set off by lustrous lashes and dark, expansive brows. Time was when those brows were not so silkily seductive. It was Madame Vera Verity, directress of the Woman Beautiful Page of the Princess Novelette, who had first advised her to try eyebrow lean, which gave that haunting expression to her eyes, so becoming in leaders of fashion, and she had never regretted it. Then there was blushing scientifically cured, and how to be tall, increase your height, and you have a beautiful face, but your nose? That would suit Mrs. Dignam because she had a button one. But Gertie's crowning glory was her wealth of wonderful hair. It was dark brown with a natural wave in it. She had cut it that very morning on account of the new moon, and it nestled about her pretty head in a profusion of luxuriant clusters, and pared her nails too. Thursday for wealth. And just now, at Edie's words, as a telltale flush, delicate as the faintest rose bloom, crept into her cheeks, she looked so lovely in her sweet girlish shyness that of a surety God's fair land of Ireland did not hold her equal. Happy Bloomsday from the Rosenbach.
Hello, I'm Paul Guerin, and I'm reading from episode 13, Nausicaa. Sissy came up along the strand with the two twins and their ball, with her hat anyhow on her to one side after her run, and she did look a streel, tugging the two kids along with the flimsy blouse she bought only a fortnight before like a rag on her back, and a bit of her petticoat hanging like a caricature. Gertie just took off her hat for a moment to settle her hair, and a prettier, a daintier head of nut-brown tresses was never seen on a girl's shoulders. A radiant little vision, in sooth, almost maddening in its sweetness. You would have to travel many a long mile before you found a head of hair the like of that. She could almost see the swift answering flash of admiration in his eyes that set her tingling in every nerve. She put on her hat so that she could see from underneath the brim, and swung her buckled shoe faster, for her breath caught as she caught the expression in his eyes. He was eyeing her as a snake eyes its prey. Her woman's instinct told her that she had raised the devil in him, and at the thought a burning scarlet swept from throat to brow till the lovely color of her face became a glorious rose. Edie Boardman was noticing it too, because she was squinting at Gertie, half smiling with her specs like an old maid pretending to nurse the baby. Irritable little gnat she was, and always would be, and that was why no one could get on with her, poking her nose into what was no concern of hers. And she said to Gertie, "A penny for your thoughts." "What?" replied Gertie, with a smile reinforced by the whitest of teeth. "I was only wondering, was it late?" Because she wished to goodness they'd take the snotty-nosed twins and their babby home to the mischief out of that. So that was why she just gave a gentle hint about its being late. And when Sissy came up, Edie asked her the time, and Miss Sissy, as glib as you like, said it was 1/2 kissing time. Time to kiss again. But Edie wanted to know because they were told to be in early. "Wait," said Sissy. "I'll run ask my Uncle Peter over there. What's the time by his conundrum?" So over she went. And when he saw her coming, she could see him take his hand out of his pocket, getting nervous and beginning to play with his watch chain, looking up at the church. Passionate nature though he was, Gertie could see that he had enormous control over himself. One moment he had been there, fascinated by a loveliness that made him gaze, and the next moment it was the quiet, grave-faced gentleman, self-control expressed in every line of his distinguished-looking figure. Sissy said to excuse her, would he mind please telling her what was the right time? And Gertie could see him taking out his watch, listening to it, and looking up and clearing his throat, and he said he was very sorry. His watch was stopped, but he thought it must be after 8 because the sun was set. His voice had a cultured ring in it, and though he spoke in measured accents, there was a suspicion of a quiver in the mellow tones. Sissy said thanks and came back with her tongue out and said Uncle said his waterworks were out of order. Then they sang the second verse of the Tantum Ergo, and Canon O'Hanlon got up again and sensed the Blessed Sacrament and knelt down, and he told Father Conroy that one of the candles was just going to set fire to the flowers, and Father Conroy got up and settled it all right. And she could see the gentleman winding his watch and listening to the works, and she swung her leg more in and out in time. It was getting darker, but he could see, and he was looking all the time that he was winding the watch or whatever he was doing to it, and then he put it back and put his hands back into his pockets. She felt a kind of sensation rushing all over her, and she knew by the feel of her scalp and that irritation against her stays that that thing must be coming on, because the last time, too, was when she clipped her hair on account of the moon. His dark eyes fixed themselves on her again, drinking in her every contour, literally worshipping at her shrine. If ever there was undisguised admiration in a man's passionate gaze, it was there, plain to be seen on that man's face. "It is for you, Gertrude MacDowell, and you know it." Edie began to get ready to go, and it was high time for her. And Gertie noticed that that little hint she gave had had the desired effect, because it was a long way along the Strand to where there was the place to push up the push car, and Sissy took off the twins' caps and tidied their hair to make herself attractive, of course, and Canon O'Hanlon stood up with his coat poking up at his neck, and Father Conroy handed him the card to read off, and he read out Panem de cielo prestitis dies. And Edie and Sissy were talking about the time all the time, and asking her, but Gertie could pay them back in their own coin, and she just answered with scathing politeness when Edie asked her, was she heartbroken about her best boy throwing her over? Gertie winced sharply. A brief, cold blaze shone from her eyes that spoke volumes of scorn immeasurable. It hurt. Oh, yes. It cut deep, because Edie had her own quiet way of saying things like that she knew would wound like the confounded little cat she was. Gertie's lips parted swiftly to frame the word, but she fought back the sob that rose to her throat. So slim, so flawless, so beautifully molded it seemed one an artist might have dreamed of. She had loved him better than he knew. Light-hearted deceiver and fickle, like all his sex, he would never understand what he had meant to her. And for an instant there was in the blue eyes a quick stinging of tears. Their eyes were probing her mercilessly, but with a brave effort, she sparkled back in sympathy as she glanced at her new conquest for them to see. "Oh," responded Gertie, quick as lightning, laughing, and the proud head flashed up. "I can throw my cap at who I like because it's leap year." Her words rang out crystal clear, more musical than the cooing of the ring-dove, but they cut the silence icily. There was that in her young voice that told that she was not a one to be lightly trifled with. As for Mr. Reggie, with his swank and his bit of money, she could just chuck him aside as if he was so much filth, and never again would she cast as much as a second thought on him, and tear his silly postcard into a dozen pieces, and if ever he dared to presume, she could give him one look of measured scorn that would make him shrivel up on the spot. Miss puny little Edie's countenance fell to no slight extent, and Gertie could see by her looking as black as thunder that she was simply in a towering rage, though she hid it, the little cat, because that shaft had struck home for her petty jealousy, and they both knew that she was something aloof, apart, in another sphere, that she was not of them, and never would be. And there was somebody else, too, that knew it and saw it, so they could put that in their pipe and smoke it. Edie straightened up baby Boardman to get ready to go, and Sissy tucked in the ball and the spades and buckets, and it was high time, too, because the Sandman was on his way for Master Boardman, Jr., and Sissy told him, too, that Billy Winks was coming, and that baby was to go dee-daw. And baby looked just too ducky, laughing up out of his gleeful eyes, and Sissy poked him like that out of fun in his wee fat tummy. And baby, without as much as by your leave, sent up his compliments to all and sundry onto his brand-new dribbling bib. "Oh, my puddeny pie," protested Sis. "He has his bib destroyed." The slight contretemps claimed her attention, but in 2 she set that little matter to rights. Gertie stifled a smothered exclamation, and gave a nervous cough, and Edie asked what, and she was just going to tell her to catch it while it was flying, but she was ever ladylike in her deportment, so she simply passed it off with consummate tact by saying that was the benediction, because just then the bell rang out from the steeple over the quiet seashore, because Canon O'Hanlon was up on the altar, with the veil that Father Conroy put round his shoulders, giving the benediction with the blessed sacrament in his hands. Happy Bloomsday from the Rosenbach.
Bloomsday 2020 is made possible through a generous grant from the Consulate General of Ireland's Immigrant Support Program. This project is also supported through the Pennsylvania Humanities Council, the federal state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Special thanks to Lenny Steiner and Perry Lerner, and to the South Jersey Celtic Society. Thank you so much for supporting Bloomsday 2020.